All right, chapter 4.6, part 2 starts with this vocabulary word function notation. What they're doing is changing your y. Okay, so we read this as f of x, this f of x. Okay, it's the same thing as having a y equals. It's where we took out the y equals and now we're putting f of x equals. It's a function of x. So here's where we're going to put in our domain values to figure out what this would be. Okay, I'll show you what that means. The function w of x, which in our case we just talked about f of x, but remember you can interchange any letters for your variables, equals 250x, represents the number of words you can read in x minutes. How many words can you read in 8 minutes? Okay, so our function is right here. W of x equals 250 times x. You plug right here, that is where they're going to show you what they want you to plug in for your x. Okay, they want us to plug in 8. So our function of 8 is the same as doing 250 times 8, which tells us that after 8 minutes, we would type 2,000 words. Okay, so this is just a confusing way of doing something that you've already done. Okay, the function t of x equals 65 times x represents the number of words that Rachel can type in x minutes. How many words can she type in 7 minutes? Okay, well, they told us that x is our minutes, so this is x. I'm going to plug that in. So I'm going to have t of 7 equals 65x, which means I need to plug that 7 in where the x is. Okay, and 65 times 7 is 455 words in 7 minutes. All right, now they want you to be able to find the range of a function if they give you the domain. Okay, so remember that the domain is your x values. The range is your y values, or this f of x. Okay, so the domain of f of x equals negative 1.5x plus 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is what they're telling you you have to plug in for your x's. And what they want you to give them is the y values. So they want you to figure out, when I plug in a 1, what do I get? When I plug in a 2, what do I get? A 3 and a 4. And then I need to list all of those values inside those funny little wiggly brackets. Okay, so this table where it has the x, the y with the function in the middle is probably the best thing to use. Okay, since they already did it for us and they tell us that 2.5, 1, negative 0.5, and negative 2 are our range values, we need to write them in numerical order inside brackets. That will be your final answer. Those are your range values, which is what they're looking for. Okay, so we'll do one together. The domain of g of x equals 4x minus 12 is 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, so they're telling us that our domain values are 1, 3, 5, and 7. What is the range, or the y values? That's these. Okay, so we need to plug in. 4 times 1 is 4, minus 12 is negative 8. 4 times 3 is 12, minus 12 is 0. 4 times 5 is 20, minus 12 is positive 8. And 4 times 7 is 28, minus 12 is 16. Okay, we're going to list them in numerical order. So negative 8, 0, 8, 16, put them in brackets, and that's my final answer. Those are my range values. All right, in word problem form, we're going to have to identify reasonable domain and ranges, because sometimes not every number makes sense. So if I have 3 quarts of paint to paint the trim in my house, a quart of paint covers 100 square feet. The function a of q equals 100 times q represents the area in square feet that q quarts of paint will cover. What domain and range are reasonable for the function, and then what is the graph? Okay, so do I need any negative numbers if I'm talking about the amount of paint that I'm going to have, or the amount of square footage I can cover? Negative numbers won't make any sense. Okay, I could do 0 if I wanted, but then I'm not actually doing any painting. So I'm going to start with 1. I could use 1 quart of paint. I could also use 2 quarts of paint. I could also use 3 quarts of paint. I can't use any more than 3 quarts because I only have 3 quarts. So my reasonable domain is 1, 2, and 3. Or if you want to include 0, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Then, to figure out what my reasonable range is, I'm going to do the math. 100 times 1 is 100. 100 times 2 is 200. And 100 times 3 gives me 300. Okay, so reasonable domain and range. My domain would be 1 to 3, and range would be 100 to 300. And now I'm going to graph those points. On the bottom here, I have my quarts of paint. And on the side, I have my square footage. Okay, I'm going to count by 100s over here. And on the bottom, I'm going to count by 1s. Okay, so for 1 quart, I'd get 100 square feet. 2 quarts would be 200 square feet, and 3 quarts would be 300 square feet. Zeros would be 0 square feet if you're going that way. And I don't even need an arrow because I can't go any farther than that. All right, you can finish your 4.6 homework today on page 271, 8 through 25 all, and then the rest of the lesson quiz.